So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new type of door trigger. This door trigger is going to interact with our same door. So we're going to tell the door to open and close in the same way, except that now this door trigger is going to be operated not by entering this trigger, not by entering this location, but by pressing a key on the keyboard. So I'm going to remove the current door trigger that's inside of my world, leave just my door that's set up there, and I'm going to add a new trigger box. So we're going back here to basic and we're going to go to trigger box. I'm going to move this trigger box so it's in the right location to where we want. So again, the advantage of moving things in Unreal, you probably want to center them to the center of the object that you want to adjust to, and then do your scaling. Because once they're centered and we start moving into that, they're going to expand from the center, right? So I'm going to change these out. And so there's my trigger area that's going to be able to work for my door. Let me go ahead and expand it a little bit more. Move it a little better into position. I'm not perfectly where I want to be. Excellent. And now that I have this trigger box selected, now that I have this here, we're once again going to make it into a blueprint. And so I'm going to make it from that setup. And instead of making it door trigger, we're going to call it door key press trigger. And once again, this opens up our editor where we start in the viewport so we can see what it looks like. We're going to go to our event graph so that we can actually have things happen when events occur. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for an event, not begin play, not begin overlap, not tick, but for when a player presses a key. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to type in key event. And this will bring up my list of keyboard events. And I'm going to choose a key for them to press. So I'm going to do E, right? And this will give me an event that will fire whenever this object reads the key press, when it reads that the E key has been pressed. So once again, just like before, we're going to need a variable that's going to be our door. It's going to need to be exposed, so I'm going to turn that eyeball on. And its type is, like we said before, it's a door. We created an object that tells Unreal what a door is. When you press the E key, right, we're going to come out here to our get door. And when you press the E key, we can tell our door to open. So now we have a quick little blueprint here that says when the player presses the E key, grab the door that's stored in that variable and tell the door to open. When they release the E key, when they let go of it, right now we're not doing anything, but we could, if we wanted to, we could say that when you release the button, it closes the door. But we're going to look at a more interesting way to kind of try to get that to work. So here's our press E to open the door functionality. It kind of gets that door set up. So I save and compile. However, if we go back to Unreal, one of the things that we'll notice is that by default, objects do not listen for key presses. Doing things like listening for a key press takes up a lot of processing, and Unreal is going to try and do as little processing as possible. So it's not going to listen for key presses unless we tell it to listen to key presses. To tell it to do that, we're going to need to add a node. So what we're going to need to do is on begin play, we're going to need to tell this blueprint that it's going to start listening for input. So that's going to be the enable input node. And what this enable input node does is it takes two pieces of information in. One is going to be the target. It's which object is listening for input. And the other is the player controller. The player controller is going to represent a given player inside of the world. So we're going to need to bring that off, and we're going to need to get player controller. And we're going to just listen for player 0. Player 0 is the local player. It's whoever's currently playing the game. Later on, when you start working on multiplayer, you'll be able to listen for inputs from other players. If we're doing a single player game, or if we're just talking about the current player who's playing the game on the local machine, that's going to be player controller 0. And we're going to be able to pass that value into enable input. So now when we begin play, this blueprint is going to listen for inputs from player 0. When it receives the E key being pressed, it's going to open the door. So if I save, compile, we go back to Unreal. We hook up our key press trigger so that right now, under my default, here's the door I connect. I'm going to set that up for BP door. And I press play. When I press my E key,
Open Sesame.
The door opens. Now I may not want the door to open every time. What I may want is when I press E, the door to toggle between two different states. Press E when it's closed and it should open. Press E when it's open and it should close. Fortunately, Unreal is going to give us some very simple tools to get that to work. So I'm going to select my blueprint again. And now when the E key is pressed, instead of just opening the door every time, we're going to set up a new node that is another one of these flow control nodes. And this flow control node that we're going to set up, a flip-flop node. The way that a flip-flop works is that the first time it's activated, it does whatever is under A. The second time, it does whatever comes out of B. The third time, it'll go back to A, fourth back to B, and it's going to alternate flip-flopping back and forth between the two. So now what we can do is we can say, look, if the first time we press it, we should open the door. Next time, we're going to take that door, and instead, we're going to close the door. This way, the first time we press the E key, it opened the door. The second time, it closed it. Third time, it'll open. The next time, it'll close. So this flip-flop node is very powerful for toggling back and forth between two actions with a single input. Excellent. So let's go ahead and save, compile, and give this one a test. And so if I press play, we'll see press E to open.
Open Sesame.
Close again. Press E again.
Open
Press E again to
Sesame.
close. Press E again to open.
Open Sesame. Open Sesame. Open Sesame.
All right, so take some time to think about all the different ways that you can use this flip-flop node, that you can use key presses. What are things that you've seen in games that you've played? Take time to talk about those with your classmates, with other people who are interested in Unreal. And in the next lesson, we'll take a look at improving some other issues that we kind of have with this.